For the longest time, we thought we understood how Dragon Ball's story played out. Majin Buu was defeated, Goku and the gang got their well-earned time of peace, and then, about 10 years later, we had the end of Z, where Goku meets Oob. That was it. The story wrapped up neatly, implying that after all the insane battles, Goku was ready to pass on his legacy. And for years, that was the timeline. Sure, Dragon Ball GT came along and tried to continue the adventure, but even then, the idea was simple. Nothing major happened between Buu's defeat and the end of Z. It was just an extended epilogue. Then along came Dragon Ball Super. Suddenly, those peaceful years weren't so peaceful. Goku and Vegeta weren't just waiting around for the next generation. They were training with literal gods, fighting across multiple universes, and unlocking transformations that made even Super Saiyan 3 look like a joke. The Dragon Ball universe itself expanded overnight. Gods, angels, Xeno, entire multiverses. What we thought was a small gap in time turned out to be some of the most eventful years of Goku's life. And now, with Dragon Ball Daima, things are getting even more complicated. New lore, new mysteries, and even a few contradictions. So today, we're going to take a deep dive into how modern Dragon Ball has completely changed how we see the series. What it added, what it rewrote, and whether the version of Dragon Ball we thought we knew even exists anymore. Think back to when Dragon Ball Z ended in the early 2000s. If you were a fan at the time, the general understanding was that Goku had a quiet stretch of years before meeting Oob. It made sense. He had beaten Majin Buu, saved the Earth again, and even came back to life permanently. It was one of the few times where it felt like he might actually be able to slow down. Then Super came in and obliterated that idea. Instead of relaxing, Goku gets involved in some of the biggest fights of his life. First, let's talk about Beerus showing up. Before Super, the gods of Dragon Ball were strong. Yes, but only for their time. Every divine figure we were introduced to eventually got surpassed. And honestly, kind of quickly. Kami got outclassed by Goku in the 21st Budokai. King Kai was barely relevant in the same arc he was introduced. Supreme Kai, while hyped up, ended up looking like a complete amateur next to Buu. Then came Beerus, who was massively stronger than anyone. His presence alone introduced a level of power we'd never seen before. And with him came the legend of the Super Saiyan God. Super Saiyan God is a transformation that fundamentally changed Dragon Ball by introducing divine energy, but its history is full of contradictions and retcons. Originally, it was a temporary power achieved through a ritual involving 6 righteous Saiyans. But then, Super revised the lore, introducing the Namekian Book of Legends and omitting the mention of an original Super Saiyan God. Toriyama later revised it again, adding Yamoshi, the first Super Saiyan whose wandering spirit supposedly inspired the ritual. And that's not even getting into the inconsistencies between the anime, manga, and movies. Did Goku absorb God Ki permanently? Is it just another form now? Why does Vegeta's version work differently? The form is as confusing as it is pivotal to the series. Then there's Whis, because just when we thought we had a handle on the god hierarchy, Super reveals that Beerus isn't even close to the top. If Beerus was an insurmountable wall, Whis was standing on top of it, casually eating ramen while watching Goku and Vegeta struggle to even grasp his power. And just when we thought Whis was the peak, Super introduced the Grand Priest, who makes even Whis look like an amateur. Then Xeno, the literal ruler of all realities, a childlike being who can erase entire universes like he's playing a game. There's an entirely new hierarchy of power above anything we had ever imagined. Instead of spending his time on Earth, Goku is out sparring with gods, competing in multiversal tournaments, and reaching power levels so absurd they would have broken every scouter back in the Saiyan saga. But it's not just about the action. Super doesn't just fill in the gap. It fundamentally changes how we look at the characters. Before, the assumption was that Goku's arc was naturally heading toward him taking a step back, becoming more of a mentor, and eventually handing things off to Oob and the next generation. But now, with everything we've seen in Super, Goku doesn't feel anywhere near that point. If anything, he's more obsessed with getting stronger than ever. So when we eventually get back to End of Z, it's going to feel different. Goku training Oob won't just be a nice passing of the torch moment. It'll feel like Goku, fresh off of fighting literal gods, still looking for his next big challenge. And that completely shifts how we interpret that final scene. Speaking of the End of Z tournament, where is everyone? Where's Beerus and Whis? Did they just decide not to go? With Gohan and Piccolo getting new power-ups, are they still just sitting on the sidelines watching? What about Broly? Is he just chilling on Beerus's planet? A lot of these can be answered with simple explanations. Maybe Beerus and Whis don't care about a small Earth tournament. Maybe Gohan and Piccolo choose not to fight. But it's still going to feel strange to see the End of Z play out without acknowledging everything Super has built up. And if you're enjoying this video so far, make sure to like and subscribe. We're on the road to 20K, and I'd love to have you on board as we continue breaking down these massive changes to the franchise. What about Goku not visiting his friends for 5 years, like Bulma mentioned? Is this something we're just supposed to overlook, or will Super rewrite this detail entirely? By now, it's clear that Dragon Ball is no longer just a linear story. It's a constantly evolving mythos, expanding its world in ways we never expected. But with Daima, we're seeing something different. This isn't just filling in gaps like Super did, it's reinterpreting and sometimes outright rewriting what we thought was true. Some of these additions make Dragon Ball's world feel richer, while others raise serious continuity questions. Let's start with what Daima adds to the universe in a way that makes sense. We've known about the Demon Realm for years, but Daima takes it a step further, revealing that the Namekians originally came from the Demon Realm. That's huge. For decades, King Piccolo claimed he was a demon, only for Dragon Ball Z to later retcon him into being a Namekian. But Daima now suggests that King Piccolo's original claims weren't entirely false. His race really did have ties to the Demon Realm all along. This doesn't contradict Z as much as it reframes what we thought was a mistake into something intentional. Then there's Supreme Kai. We've known about his role for a long time, but Daima introduces something new. Shin has 2 previously unknown siblings, and they have direct connections to the Demon Realm. This revelation completely changes the idea that Kais and demons were entirely separate forces. It implies that the Divine Overseers have closer ties to the demonic world than we ever thought. This adds a fascinating new layer to Dragon Ball's cosmic structure, making it feel more interconnected than before. But then, we get to the changes that don't quite line up. For years, Majin Buu's origins were thought to be one of 2 things. Either he was created by Bibidi, or he had existed since the dawn of the universe as a chaotic force of destruction. But Daima completely rewrites this, revealing that Buu was actually created by the Great Witch Marba of the Demon Realm, and Bibidi merely took credit. This doesn't just tweak Buu's backstory, it fundamentally changes how we see his entire existence. Does this mean Buu's connection to Bibidi and Babidi was never as important as we once thought? And it doesn't stop there. In Daima, Supreme Kai explains the concept of the multiverse. This is a massive contradiction because in Super, Goku and the others act completely unaware of the multiverse's existence until Beerus and Whis explain it to them. This creates a huge inconsistency. Did they just forget about the multiverse? Or does Daima take place in an entirely different version of events? Then we have the question of power scaling and transformations. In Daima, Vegeta achieves Super Saiyan 3, which is something fans have wanted to see for years. It makes sense in theory. Vegeta has the power and skill to reach the form, but then why does Super never mention it? Why does Vegeta never use it, even when it would have been useful against Beerus in the Battle of Gods saga? Admittedly, this one is easier to explain. It could be as simple as Vegeta choosing not to use the form because of its high energy consumption, similar to how Goku himself eventually abandoned it in favor of God Ki. But if that's the case, why not add a line or 2 of him saying this so it can line up with the timeline already set? According to Daima, Goku unlocks Super Saiyan 4 after the Buu saga, with a little help from Neva. At first, it seems like Neva was the one who unlocked the form within Goku. But then, in the very next episode, Goku is able to transform into it at will with no explanation. By the end of the series, he even states that he trained for it and knew he had it in him all along. This is huge, except for one problem. In Super, Goku never even acknowledges this form. If he unlocked Super Saiyan 4 during this period, then why didn't he transform into it at any point afterward? This directly contradicts Super's entire power progression and makes us question whether these events can even fit together. And finally, we get to the biggest contradiction of all, Rimus. We were led to believe for years that Zeno is the ultimate authority in the multiverse. He can erase entire realities with a flick of his wrist. He sits at the very top of Dragon Ball's divine hierarchy. But now, Daima introduces Rimus, a new figure who is supposedly even higher in authority. This directly rewrites what we thought was the established order of the gods. Even if Rimus is supposed to be on the same level as Zeno, where has he been? Why didn't Beerus, Whis, Zeno, or even the Grand Priest ever mention him? All of these contradictions lead to a major discussion among fans. Is Daima canon? Is Super no longer canon? Is everything canon but in different timelines? Does modern Dragon Ball even have a canon anymore? Once upon a time, Dragon Ball was easy to follow. We had the original series, we had Z, and we had an ending that tied everything together. But modern Dragon Ball? It's fragmented. GT was once considered the official sequel. Then it was erased from canon. Super was meant to be the new definitive story. Now, Daima is rewriting parts of Super. So what do we even consider canon anymore? Is Daima an alternate timeline? Does Super still lead to the end of Z? Or is that being overwritten? If Daima takes place in a different continuity, then what does that mean for future Dragon Ball stories? The more Dragon Ball expands, the less it feels like a single structured narrative. Instead, it's starting to feel like a franchise that keeps rewriting itself, each new edition changing or contradicting something we thought was set in stone. And at this point, we have to ask, does it even matter? Maybe Dragon Ball isn't about having one consistent timeline anymore. Maybe it's about the different possibilities, different versions of events, different paths the story could take. But if that's the case, then the Dragon Ball we once knew, one with a clear ending, a clear timeline, and a sense of finality, is long gone. The question is, are we okay with that? If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe. Also, check out some of my other videos. See you there.